The morning sun glared off the white marble of the Capitol, but the air felt heavy. Fleming stood by the window, his eyes tracking the motorcade below like a hawk. Beside him, Tanner checked his watch, the rhythmic ticking echoing in the silent room. The Rasputin threat was neutralized, but the board was still crowded with dangerous pieces. At exactly 3 p.m., the phone shattered the silence. Sarah Hirsch answered. Fleming requested Simon. Sarah Hirsch took the receiver, her knuckles white as bone. She hung up and turned to her son, her voice a mere whisper. "Agent Walker is coming for you." Simon stood, his face an unreadable mask of stone. Sarah watched him, a cold dread settling. Sarah looked into Simon's eyes, searching for a truth she feared to find. "Do you know anything about the president's death?" she asked. Simon didn't blink, his gaze steady. "I have been here for 2 days, Mom." It was a technical truth, a clever evasion that terrified her more than a lie. When the knock finally came, Agent Walker entered with 2 men in tow. They moved toward the elevator in a tense formation. As the doors slid shut, Simon leaned toward Walker. "These 2 have betrayed us." Before Walker could process, the 2 agents drew their weapons. 3 shots rang out. Walker crumpled to the floor, blood pooling on the cold metal tiles. One agent held up a Visiophone, the screen glowing with a cruel light. On it, Lily and Eric were bound and gagged, their eyes wide with terror. Simon froze, his heart hammering. He would not trade his family's life for vengeance. They shoved him into a black van, the tires screeching against the concrete. Inside the dark cabin, they used a beeper to emit high-frequency sound waves, a piercing shriek that scrambled Simon's senses and tore at his mind. "Why?" Simon managed to gasp through the pain. The agent laughed. 100 million reasons, kid. Money makes the world spin." They drove for 25 minutes, the city blurring past. They arrived at the Iranian embassy, as the sky turned an unnatural, bruised purple. The agents, sensing the shift, dragged Simon inside the sovereign walls. They demanded their final payment, their fingers dancing over a laptop. Then, they fled, leaving Simon trapped in a high-voltage cage. The cage was narrow, a masterpiece of cruelty designed to keep his arms pinned. 50,000 volts hummed through the metal bars, a low, deadly vibration. His gaze was so intense, so devoid of fear, that the guards found themselves backing away. Outside, the traitors' escape was short-lived. A blockade of FBI vehicles boxed them in. Fleming stepped out of the lead car, his face a mask of cold fury. "We know everything," he spat. "Walker is alive. The kids are safe. You are finished." He watched as they were dragged away, but his mind was already on the ticking clock. Turning toward the embassy, Fleming dialed the ambassador. "You have 11 minutes. The ambassador scoffed, citing international law. Fleming simply watched the clock. Inside, the guards began to panic. They heard the roar of engines and tactical boots. The ambassador, cornered and desperate, screamed his final orders. "Flip the switch!" As the main breaker clicked, the cables began to glow with a lethal current. At that exact moment, the embassy gate exploded in a magnificent shower of sparks. The FBI team surged forward through the smoke, their weapons raised, but the switch had already been thrown. The current reached a crescendo. Inside the cold, sterile walls of the embassy, the air hummed with a lethal current. Guards worked with mechanical precision, locking heavy cables between Simon and the metallic cage. Suddenly, electricity surged like a tidal wave. Simon's body convulsed violently. Smoke and sparks erupted from his skin. The very fabric of the building began to ignite. Panic took hold. People scrambled for exits as the structure groaned. Outside, the sky turned an impossible, ink-black hue. A colossal whirlpool of fire descended. Fleming watched the horror unfold, his face pale. The building vanished. A massive explosion rocked the ground, sending a shockwave through the city. Military trucks and soldiers swarmed the perimeter, sealing off the district. Above, helicopters circled like vultures, unable to approach the searing heat. Tanner arrived, standing silently beside Fleming. Fleming wept openly, his eyes fixed on the smoldering rubble. He had loved the boy. He recounted the final moments to Tanner, while news crews broadcasted the catastrophe. At the hotel, Sarah clutched her children, Lily and Eric, to her chest. Agent Walker, recovering from a jagged neck wound, reached for her phone. She knew Simon had saved her life. The bullet had been deflected by his power. She called Fleming, her voice trembling. "Is Simon okay?" she whispered. Fleming hesitated, the silence stretching for an eternity. "He is gone," he finally replied. But then, Fleming froze. Through his binoculars, he saw a figure emerging. It was Simon, wreathed in living flames, his eyes burning a deep, celestial red. A pillar of light stretched into the heavens, and from it, radiant beings descended. Wherever they touched the earth, people disintegrated into ash. Fleming rushed forward, shouting through a megaphone, "Simon, stop this!" A voice, cold and ancient, echoed, "I cannot. The gates are broken. Judgment Day has begun." Fleming summoned Sarah to the edge of the abyss. When she arrived, the heat was so intense it was melting metal nearby. Ignoring the warnings, she ran toward the column of fire. Miraculously, the flames parted for her, recognizing her blood. She screamed his name, but Simon stood silent for 10 long minutes. "Do not come closer, Sarah," he warned, his voice a hollow shell. "You will burn. End this," she sobbed, her heart breaking. "You are destroying everything you loved." Simon hesitated, the fire flickering. "There is only one way," he explained. He spoke of the requirement, a non-magnetic bullet, fired by the one who gave him life. Sarah collapsed to her knees, screaming "No!" into the wind. Fleming knelt beside her. 2 billion are dead. The world is ending. You must do it." Fleming ordered the gold bullets from the lab. He loaded the weapon with a heavy heart and placed it in Sarah's trembling hand. Sarah walked toward the fire, her steps uneven and heavy. 10 feet from the boy, she stopped, begging him one last time to find another way. Simon looked at her, and for a moment, the ancient coldness vanished. "I am David," he said softly. "My soul is safe. Please, Sarah, do it." The world stood still as she raised the weapon. The fire roared, the wind howled. "Please, my love, my life, don't make me do it. I will die right here with you. Please, please, do not do this." With a final, choked sob, she pulled the trigger. The pillar of light shattered, and the world fell into a profound, grieving silence. It was over. Fleming and Tanner ran towards Sarah. It seemed like miles until they reached her. She fainted, and as she crumpled to the ground, she reached out towards Simon. He was lying there, inanimate. They took Sarah and made her come back to the sad reality and hurtful future that she had killed with her own hand her beloved 8-year-old child. Fleming lifted Simon from the ground in his arms, and Tanner held Sarah against him to help her walk. They all in an F.B.I. black car that took them to the hotel parking garage. Sarah felt like a zombie. Her shoulders slumped down. Suddenly, a little hand grabbed hold of hers, and a little voice asked, "Mommy, what happened?" All three jumped and looked at Simon, eyes wide open. "Oh my God, what is this? A miracle!" Sarah cried her heart out, but this time her tears were of joy. She took Simon in her arms and kissed his face and his hands endlessly. "Mommy, what happened?" Simon asked again. "Why are you crying?" "Mommy, what happened?" Simon asked again. "Why are you crying? You do not remember? Nothing?" Sarah had been revived. She couldn't contain her happiness. "Fleming, we are so happy that you are okay." Fleming looked at Simon's chest and saw no bullet hole. Simon asked, "Who are you? Do I know you?" Sarah, Fleming, and Tanner looked at each other, and for a moment they were totally confused. "David?" Sarah asked. Simon asked, "Why are you calling me David?" They all smiled, and Tanner said, "It is better this way. He will be able to live like a normal child." They all laughed. Simon looked at his mother and winked. She was the only one that saw it.